So the inspiration behind the name, the Harebrained Press, really comes from William Blake, the poet, visionary and artist, who is a great influence for me. He said, if a fool would persist in his folly, he would become wise. And for me, that really resonated with what I was doing in the Harebrained Press Project. I knew that it was an undertaking that was quite foolish in some ways. I knew it would be difficult. I didn't know it would be almost impossible. But we managed to pull everything together and to create a book. In 2016, I decided that I wanted to offer my stories as a collection here in Australia, and these stories had been formally published overseas, mainly in the US and Canada, but I wanted to put them together and offer them here. The main thing that was important to me in self-publishing was that I wanted to offer these stories in a medium that reflected the spirit of the stories, and I wanted to do it my way. So these stories had been described by publishers as being, having a poetic quality, being beautifully written. So I thought, well, I really want to offer these stories in a beautiful medium, and what's the most beautiful way I could do it. And I thought, well, that would be to create it completely by hand. I started out at the Melbourne Museum of Printing with a workshop that they were offering called The Roots of Printing. And it took me about 12 hours to put together and print a poster. And I thought, oh my goodness, what have I got myself into? But I had committed to the project by then. I'd told too many people, so I decided to forge ahead. And I printed pages 1 to 12 at the Melbourne Museum of Printing before I decided that travelling to Melbourne every 2 weeks and printing for 12 hours a day over 2 days was unsustainable, and I'd need to find a studio closer to home. I found Hip Cap Printery, which is located just outside of Trentham, and Lawrence Finn has a beautiful studio there with a wonderful German printing press called an Aspern. My new routine was to spend about 20 hours a fortnight setting type. So I'd set 8 pages at a time, and I'd put them into 2 printing forms. And then over a weekend I'd travel about 260 kilometres to and from the printery and print 160 copies of 8 pages over that time. Then I'd then take the type and redistribute it into the case and then set it again into the next 8 pages. I managed to print pages 13 through to 105, but it was difficult for me travelling in the early mornings and the late evenings, especially during the winter months, because it's quite a treacherous drive. So I made the difficult decision that I would need to actually source my own printing press and set up at home if I was to continue and finish the book. It took me quite a while to find a printing press that I could set up at home. I applied a couple of times for bank loans, unsuccessfully, and I didn't know what I was going to do for a period of about 9 months. And then finally a Facebook Marketplace listing came up for a flatbed printing press, which was affordable. Travelled to Melbourne to pick that up, and I christened that printing press Ronaldo. The problem with Ronaldo was that he didn't have an automatic inking system, so I actually had to have a roller made up that I would use to ink the type manually, and that was quite tricky because you need to do a lot of calibrating to get that right, and also it's quite physically demanding. The roller itself weighed about 4 kilograms, and I was working, about 10-12 hours with this 4 kilogram roller to try and get these pages printed, and it was very, very strenuous work. So the book covers are printed on an 1890s Golding Pearl treadle press, which came from the Melbourne Museum of Printing. Unfortunately, the museum closed down and all the equipment was auctioned off. We were successful in buying the pearl, and we brought it home and restored it, and it was such a delight to be able to print the paper covers of my book on this beautiful 130-year-old printing press. During the period where I was looking for a printing press to set up at home, there were about 9 months when I focused on producing the end papers for my book. I had to learn a new art form, paper marbling, which I really wanted to use to capture the visual theme on the end papers of the book. So there's a theme of anatomy which runs through the imagery in the book, and I wanted the end papers themselves to reflect a look of vivisected flesh. So it took a long time to work with my materials and to use them in a way that would capture this look in the way that I wanted. But I was just so happy with the results in the end. In 2020, I was really focused on bringing my press sheets together and binding them into books. So I had to learn how to bookbind. But at that time, COVID had come along, and this really got in the way of my attending any classes. I had to think about what resources I could use. And fortunately, for the modern age, we have YouTube videos, which were just so helpful for me to be able to learn and troubleshoot, and combine this knowledge with what I could glean from books, and also with questions that I could ask, usually via email to various bookbinders. So that has been a wonderful blessing, and I've managed to gain what I needed to bring these books together. I'm very blessed to have Kain White as my partner, who's a wonderful human being, but also a very talented artist. And throughout the bookmaking process, we discussed each of the images that were going to go into the book. So there are 7 story title pages, and there's a beautiful image for the front cover.
So when we developed the artworks themselves, we were really looking for that anatomical look and combining it with a coloured element. So you can see each image has a black image and then a separate block would be for the coloured element. So that tells a little bit of a story. The images aren't necessarily illustrations of characters or settings or anything in the stories. They're more an impression of it in a more of a ambiguous, open-ended kind of way. The way we did the images was I would just sit and read the story, and then some images would come to mind. I would discuss it with Beck and then put some really quick sketches together. I'd go back and speak again with Beck and then make something a bit more detailed. Maybe look for some inspiration that might be directing in that area. So maybe it would be, I'd like a profile of a person. So I would look for images that might help with that, or do some sketches. The one with the hand with the branch, I modelled my own hand on that and then stylized it to be more like one of these anatomical images that you see. So that process could have one quick sketch, then another sketch, then a sketch that would be actually what you'd translate into the block. So it has to meet specific size requirements. Most of them were, I think, about 5 inches by 4 inches or something like that, around about. And then I had to make sure that the colours would fit into the page as well. So there was a lot of planning involved. The concepts themselves were really helpful to have a direction and keep the overall theme on track as well.
Overall, the Harebrained Press Project has been a wild ride. So it's almost been 7 years. When I set out, I didn't know that it would take me that long. That's probably a good thing. But I wouldn't change that for the world. It's all been, every moment has been worthwhile, and it's helped me to grow as an artist and as a person. There are no clouds tonight. Only a hooded moon on the hill's shoulder. That and the glimmering swirl of an ocean above me. For tonight, my first night out, what else could this be? What else could sweep so far as this, dance so deep? What else so blue, every secret shade of it? What else so slick and slanted as to throw back such clean light? I watch its breaks and ripples, follow its tide with my eyes, the Milky Way. Funny how it reflects the road below. And I notice other things now beneath the stars, the fence posts receding, the glint from a distant chimney and window pane. The whole valley with its white deadwood and the gleam from road and stream reflects the stars. My skin sings with the crickets and the creeping things in the soil. The whole wild theatre of night seems to be opening inside of me. It's as though I could recite the trees' deepest dreams, the stories that have been marched and rolled and pounded into this road.